Let's be honest. If you grew up in the 60s, 70s, or even the 80s, childhood felt more like a contact sport than playtime. We had toys that could launch sharp projectiles across the yard, kits that baked plastic bugs under real heat lamps, and yes, even science sets that let kids dabble with radioactive materials. No helmets, no supervision, no warning labels. And somehow, we made it out alive, with scraped knees, singed eyebrows, and the occasional trip to the ER as proof. Today, we're cranking back the clock to revisit some of the most dangerously outrageous toys ever sold in America. The kind that wouldn't just fail a safety test today. They'd probably get the manufacturer arrested. And what better place to start than one of the deadliest backyard classics of all time, the infamous lawn darts. If you grew up in the 70s or 80s, chances are you saw a set of these at a barbecue or family reunion. They were called jarts, better known as lawn darts. On the surface, it seemed simple, a family-friendly game. You toss a heavy dart, aiming for a plastic ring target in the grass. Kind of like horseshoes, but deadlier. Here's the problem. These weren't soft foam darts. Each one was nearly a foot long, tipped with a solid metal spike. They were designed to stick into the ground. But guess what? They also stuck into pretty much anything else they hit. The driveway, the picnic table, and, unfortunately, people. Every toss was basically a high-stakes gamble. If your aim was off, or if a kid ran into the wrong spot at the wrong time, someone was leaving the backyard with more than a grass stain. And that wasn't just theory. By the late 80s, lawn darts had been linked to thousands of ER visits and, tragically, several deaths, many of them children. Parents and doctors begged for a ban, but manufacturers insisted they were safe when used properly. Finally, in 1988, after years of accidents and one particularly heartbreaking case that made national news, the US government stepped in and banned lawn darts for good. Today, if you find an old set of jarts at a garage sale or in your dad's shed, you're technically looking at illegal contraband. But for those who remember, lawn darts weren't just a game. They were a symbol of an era when danger came shrink-wrapped in the toy aisle, and kids lined up to play anyway. Let's kick things off with a classic. Jarts, or as most of us knew them, lawn darts. Picture it, a sunny backyard in the 70s. Kids are running barefoot through the grass, burgers are sizzling on the grill, and, in the middle of it all, someone is hurling a 12-inch dart, tipped with solid steel high into the sky. The idea was simple: land it inside a plastic ring target. The reality? These things didn't always land where you wanted. They landed in arms, legs, and tragically in children. By the 1980s, jarts had been blamed for dozens of serious injuries and at least 3 deaths. Parents begged for change. Doctors raised alarms, and finally in 1988, after years of pressure, the US government banned them for good, but not before they left a permanent scar on backyard barbecues across America. And yes, the name is not a joke. Released in 1950, this educational toy promised kids a chance to explore the exciting world of nuclear science by giving them actual radioactive materials. Inside the box, a Geiger counter, a cloud chamber, and tiny samples of uranium ore. That's right, kids in the 50s could literally play with nuclear fuel before dinner. The kit only stayed on shelves for about a year, for obvious reasons, but it remains one of the most infamous examples of how toy companies once believed curiosity was more important than, say, her motorized jaw. Now let's fast forward to the 1990s and meet the Cabbage Patch snack time kid. She looked adorable. She was supposed to be a doll that could eat little plastic snacks you fed her. But her motorized jaw didn't know the difference between a French fry and a child's hair. More than a few kids got ponytails, fingers, or clothes stuck inside her unstoppable chewing mechanism. In some cases, parents actually had to call the fire department to pry their children free. By 1997, she was yanked off shelves, but not before leaving more than a few bald spots. Of course, who could forget creepy crawlers and the original Easy Bake Oven? Both gave kids real heating elements, 100-watt bulbs or even exposed coils, so they could melt plastic goop into rubbery bugs or bake tiny cakes. And yes, it worked. Until a child grabbed too soon or touched the wrong part and ended up with burns, blisters, and ER trips. Thousands of injuries eventually forced redesigns and safety upgrades. But if you grew up in that era, chances are you've got at least one scar to prove it. And finally, the deceptively simple clackers. 2 acrylic balls on a string. Swing them up and down fast enough and they'd smack together with a satisfying clack, clack, clack. The problem? Sometimes those balls didn't just clack. They shattered mid-air, exploding into shards of sharp plastic that flew across the room like tiny glass grenades. For some kids, clackers were a bad accident waiting to happen. And yet millions of kids played with them, survived them, and even remember them fondly. But why did parents keep buying them? And how did toy companies keep getting away with it? That's coming up next. After decades of accidents, recalls, and a mountain of ER reports stacking higher every year, America finally reached a breaking point. Enough was enough. By the early 1990s, the federal government stepped in, not with suggestions, but with strict rules that would change childhood forever. The Consumer Product Safety Commission, the CPSC, rose to the role of watchdog, the final gatekeeper of what was safe to call a toy. Suddenly, the playground shifted. Toy makers could no longer dream up wild ideas, throw them in a box, and send them straight to the shelves. Now, every invention had to survive a gauntlet of safety tests and warning labels before a single child tore off the wrapping paper. The new commandments were clear: no toxic paints or mystery chemicals hiding inside, no swallow-sized parts waiting to choke a toddler, no exposed heating coils or bulbs hot enough to leave blisters, and absolutely no uranium ore in a starter kit. And just like that, the wild west of childhood fun faded. Today's toys are safer, softer, designed with foam padding instead of sharp steel tips, molded curves instead of jagged edges, and a warning label for nearly every possible misuse. Parents now trust that playtime won't end with a trip to the ER. But ask anyone who once dodged a flying lawn dart, baked rubbery bugs under a 100-watt bulb, or swung a pair of clackers until they exploded in mid-air, and you'll see a smile tug at their face. Because it wasn't safe, it wasn't smart, but it was unforgettable. And the scars? They're not regrets, they're proof. Proof that you survived, and that you had a childhood carved from danger, chaos, and stories worth telling. Maybe you had a pair of clackers that left purple bruises on your arms. Maybe you melted a plastic bug in the creepy crawlers set and nearly smoked out the whole kitchen. Or maybe you were one of the fearless few who tossed lawn darts across the yard and somehow walked away without a trip to the ER. Back then, childhood wasn't padded, bubble-wrapped, or stamped with a warning label. It was rough, reckless, and unforgettable. Sure, today's toys are safer, and that's a good thing. But let's be honest, there's something about growing up with a little danger that built grit, sparked imagination, and left us with stories we'll never stop telling. Now it's your turn. What dangerous toy did you grow up with? Did it bite, burn, or leave a scar you still carry? Drop your story in the comments. We'd love to hear it. And hey, if this trip down memory lane made you laugh, wince, or just remember how wild childhood used to be, hit like, subscribe for more forgotten throwbacks, and share this with that one friend who definitely has stitches thanks to a toy. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there, because childhood, it isn't what it used to be.